Dr. Hyune Kim looked up from her workstation as the ship's alarm began screaming. Red lights flashed across the lab walls of the research vessel New Seoul. She had been studying alien bone samples for the past 3 hours, her eyes tired from looking through the microscope. "What is happening?" asked Jinwoo Park, her research assistant. He dropped the datapad he was holding. His face turned pale as the ship shook violently. "I don't know," Hyune said. She stood up quickly, her chair rolling backward. "Maybe we hit something." The ship shook again, harder this time. Equipment fell from the shelves. Glass containers crashed to the floor, spilling strange colored liquids everywhere. The lights went out for a moment, then came back on dimmer than before. Taemin Lee burst through the lab door. He was the ship's security officer, a tall man with serious eyes. His uniform was torn and there was blood on his forehead. "We're under attack," he said, breathing hard. "Vorthak raiders. 3 ships. They came out of nowhere." Hyune's heart started beating faster. Everyone knew about the Vorthak Empire. They were warriors who conquered planets and enslaved entire species. Their ships were faster and stronger than human vessels. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Not long," Taemin said. "Captain Park ordered all civilians to the emergency pods. You need to go now." Another explosion shook the ship. This time the lights stayed off longer. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "What about our research?" Jinwoo asked. 3 years of work is in these files. "Leave it," Taemin said. "Your lives are more important." But before they could move, the ship's engines stopped. The constant humming sound that had been their background noise for months suddenly went quiet. The silence felt wrong and scary, too. "Late," Taemin whispered. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. They were not human footsteps. They were heavier, slower, and there were too many of them. The sound of metal boots against metal floors grew louder. "Hide," Taemin said, pulling out his weapon. "Maybe they won't find you." But there was nowhere to hide in the small lab. And even if there was, the Vorthak had scanners that could detect human life signs through walls. The lab door exploded inward. Smoke filled the room. Through the smoke came shapes that looked like nightmares. The Vorthak soldiers were huge, almost 3 meters tall. Their skin was dark green and covered in scales like a reptile. Their heads looked like dragons from old Earth stories with sharp teeth and yellow eyes. They wore black armor that made them look even bigger. Each one carried weapons that could cut through metal. Behind them came more soldiers, and more after that. Taemin raised his weapon, but one of the aliens moved faster than seemed possible for something so big. A scaled hand knocked the gun away like it was a toy. Another hand grabbed Taemin by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "Don't hurt him," Hyune said, stepping forward. "We surrender." The alien holding Taemin looked at her with those terrible yellow eyes. It said something in a language that sounded like rocks grinding together. Then it threw Taemin against the wall. He hit hard and slid to the floor, unconscious but still breathing. More aliens entered the lab. They grabbed Jinwoo and Hyune, with hands that felt like iron clamps. The aliens were so strong that struggling was useless. They dragged the humans through the corridors of their own ship. Hyune saw other crew members being herded together. Captain Park had a cut on his face. Engineer Minsu was limping badly. All of them looked scared and defeated. The aliens forced them onto a transport ship. It was dark inside and smelled like metal and something else Hyune couldn't identify. The ceiling was too low for the tall aliens, so they had to bend their heads. But it was still too high for humans, making them feel even smaller. The journey to the main Vorthak ship took only a few minutes. When they arrived, Hyune gasped. The alien ship was massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It looked like a floating city made of black metal and sharp angles. Inside, the corridors were huge and cold. The walls were covered in symbols that hurt to look at. Strange sounds echoed from somewhere deep in the ship. The aliens marched them through passage after passage until Hyune lost all sense of direction. Finally, they reached a large room that looked like a throne room from ancient times. But everything was wrong and alien. The ceiling stretched high, above them, disappearing into shadows. Screens showed star maps and battle plans. And in the center of it all sat the biggest alien Hyuna had ever seen. He was at least 4 meters tall, even sitting down. His scales were darker than the others, almost black, and covered in scars from old battles. He wore armor that looked like it was made from the bones of some giant creature. Around his neck hung trophies that Hyuna didn't want to think about too closely. "I am Warlord Krextal," the massive alien said in perfect but accented English. His voice was deep and sounded like an earthquake. "You are my prisoners now." The human captives were forced to kneel in front of the throne. Hyuna's knees hit the cold metal floor hard. She looked up at the warlord and tried not to show her fear. "Your ship carried interesting technology," Krextal continued. "Medical scanners, research equipment, biological samples. We will study these things." "Those are for peaceful research," Hyuna said. "We're scientists, not soldiers." Krextal laughed. It was a horrible sound that made the walls seem to shake. "Peaceful research. How very human. You study us like insects while we conquer galaxies." He stood up from his throne and walked toward them. Each step made the floor vibrate. Up close, he was even more terrifying. His claws could probably cut through human bones like paper. "Your species amuses me," he said, looking down at them. "So small, so weak, so convinced that thinking makes you important." He stopped in front of Hyuna. "You, female, you were in charge of the biological research?" "Yes," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Then you know our anatomy, our physiology. You have studied us like specimens in a laboratory." Hyuna nodded. It was true. Her research focused on alien biology and body mechanics. She had spent years studying how different species moved, how their joints worked, how their muscles and bones fit together. "Good," Krextal said. "Then you understand how inferior your species is." Without warning, his massive hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was incredibly strong, like being caught in a mechanical vice. Hyuna gasped as pain shot up her arm. "This is the difference between us," Krextal said, tightening his grip. "We are strong. You are fragile." Hyuna looked up at the towering alien. Her wrist felt like it might break at any second, but her mind was working, analyzing what she saw. Years of studying alien anatomy had taught her to look at bodies like machines, and every machine had weak points. Even this one. Hyuna gritted her teeth as Warlord Krextal squeezed her wrist harder. The pain was terrible, but she forced herself to think clearly. Her years of research had taught her that panic was the enemy of good science. Even now, with her bones ready to break, her mind kept working. She looked at the massive hand holding her. The Vorthak anatomy was fascinating from a scientific point of view. Their incredible strength came from dense muscle fibers and reinforced bone structure. But strength always came with trade-offs. She had learned this from studying dozens of alien species. "You see how helpless you are?" Krextal said, increasing the pressure. "This is why humans will always be slaves. You think too much and do too little." The other Vorthak soldiers laughed at their warlord's words. They enjoyed watching the small humans suffer. In their culture, physical power was everything. Weakness deserved no respect. But Hyuna was studying the way Krextal's arm was positioned. His elbow joint was extended, locked in place to maintain his crushing grip. From her research, she knew that Vorthak joints were different from human ones. They were built for power, not flexibility. The Vorthak elbow had a unique structure. When fully extended, it could deliver incredible force. But this same design created a critical vulnerability. There was a specific angle where the joint became unstable. The problem was that Vorthak anatomy prevented them from reaching this angle naturally. Their own muscle structure protected them from this weakness. But humans were different. Human joints were built for range of motion, not maximum strength. This gave them access to angles and positions that other species couldn't achieve. Hyuna looked up at Krextal's confident face. He was so sure of his superiority. He had no idea what she was thinking. To him, she was just another weak human about to break under his power. "You know what I find interesting about Vorthak physiology?" she said quietly. Krextal blinked in surprise. He had expected her to beg or cry, not start a scientific discussion. Your muscle density is almost 3 times that of a human, she continued, keeping her voice calm despite the pain. Your bone structure can withstand pressures that would crush our skeletons. The warlord looked puzzled but interested. You study us like laboratory animals. Yes, Huni said. And I learned something very important. In nature, every adaptation has a cost. Your strength comes with a price. She slowly moved her free hand toward his extended arm. The movement looked casual, like she was just trying to steady herself. The Vorthak guards didn't see it as a threat. The price is flexibility. She continued. Your joints are designed for power in specific directions, but this creates blind spots, angles you cannot protect against. Krextal started to look suspicious. What are you talking about, human? Let me show you, Hyun-ai said. In one smooth motion, she did 3 things at once. First, she twisted her captured wrist in a direction that Krextal wasn't expecting. The movement was small but precise. Second, she used her free hand to apply pressure to a specific point on his forearm, just below the elbow joint. Third, she shifted her body weight in a way that created leverage. The combination of forces hit Krextal's elbow at exactly the right angle. His joint, locked in its extended position, had no way to compensate. The sound of his elbow dislocating echoed through the throne room like a gunshot. Krextal's roar of pain was deafening. He released Hyun-ai's wrist immediately and staggered backward. His massive arm hung at an unnatural angle, completely useless. The most feared warlord in the Vorthak Empire was brought to his knees by a human woman, half his size. The throne room fell silent except for Krextal's gasps of pain and shock. Every Vorthak soldier stared in disbelief. This was impossible. Humans were weak. They were prey. They couldn't hurt a Vorthak warrior, especially not their greatest warlord. Hyun-ai rubbed her sore wrist and looked down at the kneeling giant. She felt no satisfaction, only scientific interest. The technique had worked exactly as she had predicted. Your elbow joint has a hyperextension limit of approximately 15 degrees beyond normal extension, she explained to the stunned aliens. When force is applied at the correct angle, the joint becomes unstable and dislocates. Your own strength works against you because you cannot release the grip fast enough to compensate. Jinwoo stared at his supervisor with his mouth open. He had worked with Dr. Kim for 2 years, but he had never seen anything like this. Tai Min, who had regained consciousness, looked equally amazed. As a security officer, he understood fighting, but this was something completely different. This was science used as a weapon. The interesting thing, Hyun-ai continued, addressing the other Vorthak soldiers who were too shocked to move, is that humans can perform this technique precisely because we are built differently. Our joints prioritize flexibility over strength. What you see as weakness is actually an advantage in specific situations. One of the Vorthak officers, a female with silver scales, stepped forward. Her name was Veltar, and she commanded one of the battleships. Unlike the others, she didn't look angry or confused. She looked fascinated. You planned this, Veltar said. Not exactly, Hyun-ai replied. I studied Vorthak anatomy as part of my research. When Warlord Krextal grabbed my wrist, I recognized the opportunity. Your species has incredible strengths, but like all species, you have weaknesses too. Krextal was still on his knees holding his damaged arm. His face showed pain and something else that Hyun-ai recognized as fear. For the first time in his life, the mighty warlord had been defeated by someone he considered inferior. How? He gasped. Knowledge, Hyun-ai said simply. I understand how your body works. I know where the weak points are. More importantly, I know how to reach those weak points using human flexibility and precision. She looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at her. This is what humans do. We learn. We analyze. We find solutions to problems that seem impossible. Veltar was studying Hyun-ai with new interest. Could you do this to other Vorthak? Yes, Hyun-ai said without hesitation. I could teach the technique to other humans. Your entire species has the same joint structure. which means the same vulnerability. The implications of her words hit the aliens like a physical blow. If humans could disable Vorthak warriors with a simple joint manipulation, everything changed. The foundation of Vorthak military power was their physical superiority, but if that advantage could be neutralized by knowledge and technique. Krextal struggled to his feet, still cradling his ruined arm. His yellow eyes blazed with rage and humiliation. "You will pay for this, human." "Maybe," Hyune said calmly. "But the knowledge is already out there. Other humans know what I know. And now that you've demonstrated the technique works, the information will spread." She was right, and everyone in the room knew it. The human research ship had been transmitting data until the moment it was captured. Other human vessels would find the wreckage. They would investigate. They would discover what had happened here, and they would learn. "The galaxy is about to change," Hyune said quietly. "You saw humans as weak prey, but we're something much more dangerous than predators. We're problem solvers. And you just became our most important problem to solve." The silence in the throne room was complete. For the first time in Vorthak history, their warriors felt something they had never experienced before. They felt vulnerable. News traveled fast through the Vorthak fleet. Within hours, every soldier on every ship had heard the impossible story. A human female, barely reaching a Vorthak warrior's chest, had crippled their greatest warlord with her bare hands. Most refused to believe it at first. Humans were weak. Everyone knew this. They were soft creatures who built machines to do their fighting for them. The idea that one could defeat Krextal in physical combat was ridiculous. But then the security recordings spread through the fleet's communication network. Every Vorthak warrior watched the footage over and over. They saw their mighty warlord grab the human woman. They saw her make a small movement. They heard the crack of his elbow breaking. They watched him fall to his knees in agony. The recordings could not lie. On the bridge of the battleship Dark Talon, Ship Commander Veltar studied the footage for the 20th time. Unlike her fellow officers, she was not angry or embarrassed. She was curious. "Replay the moment of contact," she told her tactical officer. The hologram showed the critical seconds again. Veltar watched Dr. Kim's movements carefully. The human's actions were precise and controlled. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. Every movement had a purpose. She knew exactly what she was doing, Veltar said quietly. "Impossible," growled her weapons officer, a scarred veteran named Torvak. "Humans are cowards. They run from real fighting." "Then explain what we just saw," Veltar said. Torvak had no answer. None of them did. Meanwhile, in the medical bay of Krextal's flagship, Dr. Hyune was treating the warlord's injured arm. The Vorthak medical staff had stepped aside, admitting they didn't know how to repair the damage. Their medicine focused on treating battle wounds, not complex joint injuries. "Hold still," Hyune told Krextal as she examined his elbow. "I need to see how badly the ligaments are damaged." The mighty warlord, reduced to depending on his tiny prisoner for medical care, gritted his teeth in humiliation. But he needed his arm functional again. His pride would have to wait. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. "I would have killed you without thinking twice." "Because I'm not you," Hyune replied, gently moving his arm to test the joint. "Besides, fixing your elbow teaches me more about Vorthak anatomy. Knowledge is never wasted." Jinwoo and Taimin watched from the corner of the medical bay. They had been allowed to stay as long as they didn't interfere. Both men were studying, the aliens around them with new eyes. "Look at their stance," Taimin whispered to Jinwoo. "See how they distribute their weight?" Jinwoo nodded. As Dr. Kim's research assistant, he had learned to observe and analyze. Their center of gravity is higher than humans. That massive chest makes them top-heavy, which means they would be vulnerable to certain takedown techniques, Taimin added. His security training was combining with their new understanding of alien physiology. They were learning, and they were not the only ones. Light years away, the human colony ship New Busan received a priority transmission from Earth Command. The message contained Dr. Kim's research files, along with the security footage from the Vorthak ship. Within minutes, every human scientist and military officer in the system was studying the data. Captain Lee Dong-ho of the Colony Defense Force watched the footage with growing excitement. For years, human colonies had lived in fear of alien raiders. Their weapons were weaker, their ships were slower, and their soldiers were smaller. But this changed everything. "Get me Dr. Park from the medical center," he ordered, "and contact the university. I want every biology professor and anatomy specialist in this system to see this recording." Dr. Park Yoon-ji arrived within an hour, bringing 3 of her best students. They studied the footage in silence, then began discussing what they had seen. "The technique exploits the Vorthak joint structure," Dr. Park explained to Captain Lee. "But the principle could work on other species too. Any species with similar anatomical features would have the same vulnerability." "What about the Thurians?" Captain Lee asked, referring to another aggressive alien race. "Their joints are different, but they have other weak points," one of the medical students said. "Their neck structure is actually quite fragile despite their size. And the Zephyrians have that electrical organ in their chest," another student added. "If you could disrupt the nerve cluster that controls it." Captain Lee smiled grimly. For the first time in years, he felt hope instead of fear when thinking about alien threats. Back on the Vorthak flagship, Dr. Hyun-ae finished treating Krextal's elbow. The joint was stabilized, but it would never be as strong as before. The Warlord would carry this reminder of human capabilities for the rest of his life. "There," she said, stepping back. "You should regain about 80% of your strength in that arm. The remaining 20% is permanent damage." Krextal flexed his arm carefully. It hurt, but it worked. "You could have made it worse." "Yes," Hyuni agreed. "I could have shattered your entire arm structure. Or I could have targeted your neck instead and killed you instantly." The Warlord stared at her. "Why didn't you?" "Because death would have ended the lesson," she explained. "I wanted you to understand something important. Humans don't need to be the strongest to be dangerous. We just need to be smarter." Ship Commander Veltar, who had been watching the medical procedure, stepped forward. "Dr. Kim, I want to discuss something with you." "What kind of discussion?" Hyuni asked. "A practical one," Veltar replied. "You have shown us that human knowledge can defeat Vorthak strength, but knowledge works both ways. If you can learn our weaknesses, we can learn yours." Hyuni nodded. "That's true, but there's a difference between us." "What difference?" "We've been studying you for years. You've been ignoring us. We have detailed files on dozens of alien species, including complete anatomical charts and physiological analyses. What do you know about human biology beyond the fact that we're smaller and weaker?" Veltar's silence was her answer. "That's the real difference," Hyune continued. "Humans are curious about everything. We study, we learn, we analyze. Most species, including yours, only pay attention to immediate threats. You saw us as harmless, so you never bothered to understand us." "And now?" Veltar asked. "Now it's too late," Hyune said. "The information is already spreading through human space. Every colony, every ship, every research station now has access to what we've learned. About alien anatomy, they're probably developing new techniques right now." She was right. At that very moment, human scientists across the galaxy were working with the new data. They were creating training programs, developing tactical manuals, and sharing information through secure networks. The balance of power was shifting, and there was nothing the aliens could do to stop it. "Your strength made you careless," Uni told the assembled Vorthak. "Our weakness made us careful. Guess which approach is more dangerous in the long run?" 3 days after the incident, the Human Information Network was buzzing with activity. Every research station, every colony, every ship had received the data package from Dr. Kim's encounter. But more importantly, they were all contributing new information back to the network. On the mining station Chen's Hope, Dr. Min-jun worked through the night studying Thurian anatomy. The massive rock-eating aliens had raided the system twice in the past year. Previously, the miners had hidden in their bunkers and hoped the defense fleet would arrive in time. Now Dr. Min Jun was mapping nerve clusters and joint structures. He had found something interesting about Thurian spinal columns. Despite their incredible strength, their necks had a design flaw that made them vulnerable to specific pressure applications. "Send this to the network immediately," he told his assistant. "Tag it as Priority 1 combat application." Similar work was happening throughout human space. On Earth, military researchers were creating comprehensive files on every known alien species. On Mars, university students were developing new fighting techniques based on anatomical weaknesses. On the frontier colonies, farmers and miners were learning pressure points and joint manipulations. The network grew stronger every day. Each new piece of information made all humans safer. Back on the Vorthak flagship, Dr. Hyune was teaching her captors about human biology. But every lesson she gave revealed how different human physiology was from what the aliens expected. "Human bone density is much lower than yours," she explained to Ship Commander Veltar. "This makes us more vulnerable to crushing injuries. But it also makes us lighter and more flexible. Which means you can move in ways we cannot," Veltar observed. "Exactly. Our joints have much greater range of motion. We can reach angles that are impossible for most species. This is why the technique I used on Krextal worked. A Vorthak could never achieve the necessary wrist position." Veltar studied the anatomical charts that Hyune had drawn. The human body looked so fragile compared to Vorthak physiology, but she was beginning to understand that fragile didn't mean weak. "Your muscle fibers are different too," Veltar noted. "Yes, we have less raw strength, but better fine motor control. We can make tiny, precise movements that most species cannot replicate. This precision is what makes us dangerous." In the corner of the room, Jinwoo was having a quiet conversation with Taemin. They had been observing the alien crew for days now, and they were starting to see patterns. "The guards change shift every 6 hours, Jinwoo whispered. "But there's a 2-minute gap when the old guards leave before the new ones arrive." "I noticed that too," Taemin replied. "Also, the door controls are designed for Vorthak hands. They have to use their full fist to operate them. If we could reach the controls during that gap, we could lock them out of this section," Jinwoo finished. They weren't planning an escape. The ship was too large, and they had nowhere to go, even if they got free. But they were learning. Every detail about Vorthak behavior and technology was valuable information. Meanwhile, throughout the galaxy, the effects of the spreading knowledge were becoming visible. Human merchant ships that had once fled at the first sign of alien raiders were now standing their ground. Colony defense forces were requesting hand-to-hand combat training instead of just more weapons. Captain Sarah Wan of the cargo hauler New Incheon faced her first test when Zephyrian pirates tried to board her ship. The Zephyrians were known for their electrical attacks and their speed. Normally, human crew members would surrender rather than face these dangerous aliens in close combat. But Captain Wan had studied the network files. She knew that Zephyrian electrical organs were controlled by a nerve cluster behind their left shoulder. She also knew that their speed came at the cost of stability. When the first Zephyrian pirate swung his electrically charged weapon at her, Captain Wan didn't try to block or dodge. Instead, she stepped inside his reach and applied pressure to the nerve cluster she had memorized from the anatomical charts. The pirate's electrical attack shut down instantly. His weapon fell from numb fingers. Captain Wan used a joint lock technique to drop him to the deck, then moved on to the next attacker. Her crew, inspired by her example and armed with the same knowledge, fought with new confidence. The pirates, expecting easy prey, found themselves facing humans who knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect. The pirates retreated in confusion. Word of their defeat spread quickly through both human and alien communication networks. Back on the Vorthak ship, Dr. Hyune was reviewing reports that had been transmitted from human space. The aliens allowed her to receive the messages because they were curious about human reactions to the incident. "Interesting reading?" Veltar asked. "Very," Hyune replied. 17 successful human victories against alien raiders in the past 3 days. Each one used techniques based on anatomical knowledge. 17? Krextal growled from his position near the wall. His arm was healing, but slowly. Impossible. The reports are quite detailed, Hyune said, showing him the datapad. A cargo captain defeated Zephyrian pirates. Miners fought off Thurian raiders. Even a passenger liner successfully repelled Kree slavers. She looked around the room at the assembled Vorthak officers. Your species ruled through fear and superior strength. But fear only works when the victim believes they have no choice. We've given humans a choice. You've given them false confidence, Krextal snarled. A few lucky victories mean nothing, do they? Hyune asked. Because the reports keep coming. Every day more humans are learning. More aliens are discovering that their physical advantages aren't as overwhelming as they thought. Veltar was studying the tactical reports with professional interest. As a military commander, she understood the implications better than her fellow officers. The humans are sharing information in real time, she observed. Every successful technique is immediately transmitted to their entire network. They're learning from each other's victories. And mistakes, Hyune added. We're also sharing what doesn't work. Each failed attempt teaches us something new about alien capabilities and limitations. You're creating a military doctrine, Veltar said with grudging respect. We're creating survival knowledge, Hyune corrected. The difference is important. Military doctrine is about conquest. Survival knowledge is about staying alive. Humans excel at staying alive. The room fell quiet as the aliens considered this. They had always seen humans as a weak species that had somehow achieved space travel through luck and technology. They had never considered that weakness might force the development of other strengths. There's something else you should know, Hyune said, scrolling through more reports. Human colonies are starting to organize training programs. Mandatory, self-defense courses based on alien anatomy. Children are learning pressure points along with basic mathematics. Children? Veltar asked. Human children have better flexibility and learning capacity than adults, Hyune explained. A 10-year-old human trained in these techniques could disable most adult aliens. We're creating a generation that will never fear species like yours. The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. The Vorthak Empire was built on the assumption that physical power determined superiority. But if even human children could neutralize that advantage... The galaxy is changing, Hyune said quietly. And you can't stop it. The knowledge is already out there. It's spreading, evolving, improving. Every day, humans become more dangerous. Opponents! Krextal slammed his good fist against the wall. We should kill you all. Stop this madness before it spreads further. Too late for that, Hyune replied calmly. The information exists in thousands of locations now. Killing us won't delete it from the network. It will just prove to other humans that we were right to prepare for this kind of threat. Veltar nodded slowly. She's correct. The tactical situation has changed permanently. We need to adapt our strategies. Or, Hyune suggested, you could consider a different approach. Entirely. What do you mean? Veltar asked. Cooperation instead of conquest, Hyune said. Humans are natural researchers and problem solvers. We could be valuable allies instead of problematic enemies. The suggestion was revolutionary. The Vorthak had never considered cooperation with a species they viewed as inferior. But as reports of human victories continued to arrive, that view was becoming harder and harder to maintain. The rescue attempt came at the worst possible time. Dr. Hyune was in the middle of explaining human cardiovascular systems to Veltar when the ship's alarms began screaming. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in pulsing red as Vorthak warriors ran to battle stations. What's happening? Jinwoo asked, looking up from the anatomical drawings he had been working on. Veltar checked her communication device. Her scaled face showed both anger and resignation. 3 human ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're demanding your release. A rescue mission, Taemin said with mixed feelings. He wanted to be free, but he knew this could make everything worse. Foolish humans, Krextal growled, entering the room with his arms still in a support brace. They think their toy ships can challenge a Vorthak battle fleet. Through the viewports they could see the approaching human vessels. They were small compared to the massive Vorthak ships, but they moved with purpose and determination. This will end badly, Hyune said quietly. She knew human ship capabilities. Against a full Vorthak battle group, 3 vessels had no chance of victory. The battle was short and brutal. The human ships fought bravely, using superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the worst of the alien firepower. But eventually, Vorthak shields and armor proved too strong. One by one, the human vessels were disabled and captured. "Bring the survivors to the arena," Krextal commanded. "It's time for some entertainment." The arena was a massive chamber in the heart of the flagship. It had been built for gladiatorial combat, where captured enemies fought for the amusement of Vorthak officers. The floor was stained with the blood of dozens of species. Yun-ai, Jin-woo, and Tai-min were escorted into the arena, along with 12 human rescue team members. The new captives looked tired and defeated. Their rescue mission had failed, and now they were all prisoners. "I am Commander Park Jae-sung," the leader of the rescue team told Hyune. "We came to get you out." "I appreciate the attempt," Hyune replied. "But this was a mistake. You should have stayed away." "We couldn't abandon you," Commander Park said. "The information you sent has changed everything. Human colonies throughout the sector are fighting back because of what you discovered." Around the arena, hundreds of Vorthak officers filled the viewing galleries. They were here to watch human weakness displayed for their entertainment. The arena floor contained various alien creatures, each one larger and more dangerous than humans. Krextal's voice echoed through the chamber's speakers. "Honored warriors, today we demonstrate why humans will always be inferior. These soft creatures will face the champions of 3 different worlds. Let them show us their precious anatomical knowledge." A gate opened, and a Thurian berserker entered the arena. The creature was 4 meters tall and covered in rock-hard scales. Its massive fists could shatter stone, and its roar shook the walls. The Thurians were known as unstoppable fighters who felt no pain and showed no mercy. The human rescue team raised their weapons, but Taemin stopped them. "Wait," he said. "I've been studying their anatomy for days. Let me handle this, Commander." Park looked skeptical. "That thing is twice your size." "Size doesn't matter if you know where to strike," Taemin replied. He walked forward to face the Thurian berserker. The alien charged immediately, its massive fists swinging in deadly arcs. But instead of dodging backward, Taemin moved to the side and stepped in close. The Thurian's strength was its weakness. Its huge muscles were built for powerful swings, but they were slow to change direction. Taemin slipped under a punch and struck the nerve cluster behind the creature's neck, exactly as Dr. Minjun had described in his research report. The effect was immediate. The Thurian's legs buckled as its nervous system was disrupted. Taemin followed up with a joint manipulation that Dr. Hyune had taught him, applying pressure to the creature's wrist in a specific way that forced it to release its grip and fall to the ground. The arena fell silent. A human security officer had just defeated a Thurian berserker using nothing but anatomical knowledge. "Impossible," whispered a Vorthak officer in the gallery. The second gate opened, releasing a Zephyrian shock trooper. These aliens were known for their speed and electrical attacks. Lightning crackled around the creature's claws as it danced around the arena, too fast for normal eyes to follow. Jinwoo stepped forward this time. "I'll take this one." He had studied the reports from Captain Wan's encounter with Zephyrian pirates. More importantly, he understood the principle behind their electrical organs. The Zephyrian attacked with blinding speed, but Jinwoo was ready. He didn't try to match the alien's speed. Instead, he used its momentum against it. When the creature lunged forward with an electrically charged strike, Jinwoo sidestepped and grabbed its shoulder, applying pressure to the nerve cluster that controlled its electrical organs. The lightning died instantly. The Zephyrian, suddenly unable to use its primary weapon, stumbled in confusion. Jinwoo used a leverage technique to throw the much larger alien to the ground, then applied a pressure hold that rendered it unconscious. 2 victories. The Vorthak audience was no longer cheering. They were watching in stunned silence. The final gate opened, and 3 different aliens entered together, A Kree slaver with poisonous claws, a Mordak warrior with blade arms, and a Vex hunter with acid spit. The arena masters had decided to end this embarrassing display by overwhelming the humans with multiple opponents. Dr. Hyun-A walked to the center of the arena. My turn. She studied her three opponents carefully. Each species had different strengths and weaknesses. The key was to use those differences against them. The Kree attacked first, its poisonous claws reaching for her throat. But Hyun-A had studied Kree anatomy extensively. She knew their claws were connected to poison sacs in their wrists, and that these sacs had vulnerable pressure points. She caught the Kree's wrist and pressed exactly where the poison sac connected, to the claw mechanism. The alien's poisonous weapons shut down immediately. A quick joint manipulation sent the Kree crashing into the arena wall. The Mordak warrior came next, its blade arms spinning in deadly arcs. But Hyun-A remembered that Mordak blade arms were actually modified bones that could be dislocated like any other joint. She waited for the right moment, then grabbed one of the spinning arms and twisted it in a direction the joint wasn't designed to handle. The blade arm separated from the Mordak's body with a wet crack. The alien screamed and fell backward. No longer able to fight effectively. That left the Vex hunter, which was spraying acid in wide arcs to keep her at a distance. But Vex acid came from specialized glands in their throats, and like all glands, they had specific nerve connections. Hyun-A picked up a piece of debris from the arena floor and threw it at the Vex's throat, striking the exact spot where the acid glands were controlled. The alien's acid spray stopped immediately, and a precise strike to another nerve cluster rendered it unconscious. The arena was completely quiet. 3 humans had just defeated 6 different alien champions using nothing but knowledge and technique. No advanced weapons, no superior strength, just understanding of anatomy and precise application of force. In the gallery, Veltar turned to her fellow officers. We need to reconsider everything we thought we knew about humans. Krextal's voice came over the speakers again, but this time there was no confidence in his tone. This changes nothing. Humans are still weak. But his words sounded hollow, even to him. Every Vorthak in the arena had just watched human fighters defeat opponents that should have been impossible to overcome. Dr. Hyun-A looked up at the gallery where Krextal sat with his advisors. You wanted a demonstration of human capabilities, she called out. Are you satisfied? The Warlord had no answer. This is what humans do, she continued, her voice carrying clearly through the silent arena. We study. We learn. We adapt. We find solutions to problems that seem impossible. Physical strength is just one tool among many. Knowledge is the most powerful weapon of all. Commander Park and his rescue team stared at their 3 colleagues with new respect. They had known humans were becoming more capable fighters, but seeing it demonstrated so clearly was still shocking. How did you know all of that? Commander, Park asked. We learned, Hyun-A said simply. Every human in the galaxy is learning. We're sharing information, developing techniques, discovering weaknesses in species that thought they had none. She looked around the arena one more time. The age of human helplessness is over. We may not be the strongest species in the galaxy, but we're becoming the most dangerous. And the difference between those two things is knowledge. In the gallery, Vorthak officers were already making plans to report this incident to their superiors. The implications were staggering. If humans could defeat their greatest champion so easily, what did that mean for the entire structure of galactic power? The balance was shifting, and everyone could feel it. The aftermath of the arena demonstration changed everything aboard the Vorthak flagship. Officers who had once strutted through the corridors with absolute confidence now glanced nervously at their human prisoners. The myth of Vorthak invincibility had been shattered in front of hundreds of witnesses. Ship Commander Veltar requested a private meeting with Dr. Hyun-A the next morning. They met in the commander's quarters, a space filled with trophies from conquered worlds and defeated enemies. But today, those symbols of military dominance felt less impressive. Dr. Kim, Veltar began, we need to discuss the future. Hyun-A sat across from the alien commander, studying her scaled features. Over the past week, Veltar had proven to be the most intelligent and adaptable of the Vorthak officers. What kind of future? Hyune asked. One where our species don't destroy each other, Veltar replied. The demonstrations in the arena have been transmitted throughout the Vorthak fleet. Every ship, every commander, every warrior has seen humans defeat our strongest champions. The old assumptions about human weakness are dead. And how do your people feel about that? Veltar's expression was grim. Some want to crush humanity before you become an even greater threat. Others are beginning to realize that might be impossible now. The knowledge you've spread through your networks has changed the tactical balance permanently. And what do you want? Hyune asked. Survival, Veltar said honestly. For both our species. The Vorthak Empire was built on the idea that physical strength determines dominance. But you've proven that knowledge can defeat strength. We need to adapt or face extinction. It was a remarkable admission from a member of the galaxy's most aggressive military force. I'm listening, Hyune said. I want to propose a prisoner exchange, Veltar explained. We release you and your people in exchange for a non-aggression agreement between humans and my battle group. But more than that, I want to establish formal communication channels. For what purpose? Learning, Veltar said. You've shown us that humans understand alien anatomy better than we understand our own. That knowledge could be valuable to both sides. Dr. Hyune considered the proposal. It was more reasonable than she had expected from a Vorthak commander. I would need guarantees, she said. Safe passage to human space for all prisoners. No retaliation against human colonies in this sector. And access to communication networks so we can verify compliance. Agreed, Veltar said without hesitation. But I want something in return. What? Medical knowledge. Vorthak medicine is crude compared to human understanding of anatomy and physiology. My warriors suffer from injuries that your people could probably heal. If we're going to coexist, we might as well benefit from each other's strengths. It was a practical proposal that made sense for both sides. Humans gained protection from Vorthak raiders, while the aliens gained access to advanced medical techniques. I'll need to discuss this with my people, Hyune said. Of course, but decide quickly. There are other Vorthak commanders who prefer more direct solutions to the human problem. The negotiation took 3 days. Human representatives, contacted through secure channels, agreed to Veltar's proposal. The precedent was established. Humans could negotiate from a position of strength based on knowledge and capability rather than military power. The prisoner release took place at a neutral space station on the edge of Vorthak territory. As Dr. Hyune and her colleagues prepared to leave the alien ship, Warlord Krextal approached her one final time. This isn't over, human, he growled, his damaged arm still weak from their encounter. No, Hyune agreed. It's just beginning. But it doesn't have to be a war, Krextal. Your people are warriors, but you're also survivors. Smart survivors adapt to changing conditions. And if we don't adapt, he asked, then you'll discover that humans can be very creative when it comes to solving problems, she replied. And, right now, aggressive alien species are becoming our most important problem to solve. Krextal had no response to that. The human woman had made her point clearly enough in their first encounter. 6 months later, Dr. Hyune stood in her new laboratory on Earth, watching news reports from across human space. The changes were remarkable and far-reaching. Human colonies that had once lived in fear of alien raiders now defended themselves with confidence. Merchant ships carried smaller security crews because their personnel were trained in alien anatomy and pressure point techniques. Even civilian transport ships had successfully repelled attacks from species that had once been considered unstoppable. But the most significant change was institutional. Hyune had established the Institute for Interspecies Biomechanics, a research center dedicated to studying alien anatomy and developing defensive techniques. Similar facilities were being built throughout human space. Dr. Kim, her assistant, called from across the lab. It was Young Ho, a young researcher who had joined the institute after seeing the arena footage. We're receiving data from the colony at New Daegu. They had an encounter with Kree slavers. Results? Hune asked. Complete success. The colonists used the nerve disruption technique you developed. No human casualties. 12 Kree prisoners who are requesting medical treatment. Hune smiled. The pattern was repeating across the galaxy. Aliens who had once seen humans as easy prey were learning to approach them with caution and respect. Her communication console chimed with an incoming message from Ship Commander Veltar. The Vorthak had kept their agreement, and their medical exchange program was proving beneficial to both sides. Dr. Kim, Veltar's voice came through the speakers. I wanted to report that the joint treatment you recommended for our warriors has improved combat readiness by 30%. Also, we've had contact from Thurian and Zephyrian commanders. They're interested in similar agreements. Interesting, Hune replied. What changed their minds? Word spreads quickly among military forces, Veltar said with what might have been amusement. No one wants to face an enemy that can defeat their strongest fighters with anatomical knowledge. So they prefer cooperation to conflict? They prefer survival to pride, Veltar corrected. Just as we did. After the call ended, Hyune walked to the window overlooking the Institute's training facilities. Below, she could see human students practicing the techniques that had grown from her original encounter with Krextal. Children learned pressure points alongside mathematics. Adults studied alien anatomy with the same dedication they once reserved for purely human medicine. Jinwoo joined her at the window. He had become one of the Institute's senior researchers, specializing in Thurian physiology. Hard to believe. It all started with one angry warlord grabbing your wrist, he said. Did it start there? Hyune asked. Or did it start with centuries of humans being curious about everything around them, including species that considered us unworthy of attention? Good point, Jinwoo agreed. We were always gathering information. We just needed the right moment to prove how dangerous that information could be. Taemin approached from the training area, where he had been teaching defensive techniques to a group of merchant marine officers. The latest reports are encouraging, he said. Pirate attacks on human ships have dropped by 60% in the past 6 months. Word is getting around that humans aren't easy prey anymore. And the diplomatic effects? Hyune asked. Even better, Taemin replied. 3 more alien governments have requested formal talks about cooperation agreements. They're offering technology exchanges, medical cooperation, even joint research projects. Fear can be a powerful motivator, Hyune observed. But so can mutual benefit. The 3 colleagues stood in comfortable silence, watching the training session below. The students were practicing techniques that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. Humans were learning to disable aliens twice their size using nothing but knowledge and precision. Do you think we've changed the galaxy permanently? Jinwoo asked. We've changed how the galaxy sees us, Hyune replied. That's even more important. For centuries, other species looked at humans and saw weakness. Now they see potential danger. That fear will keep us safe while we build something better. What kind of something better? Taemin asked. Partnerships based on mutual respect instead of dominance, she said. Species working together because they choose to, not because the strong force the weak to comply. Her communication console chimed again. This time the message was from Captain Sarah Wan, who had become something of a celebrity after her successful defense against Zephyrian pirates. Dr. Kim, Captain Wan's recorded message played. I wanted to thank you again for the knowledge that saved my ship. But more than that, I wanted to report something interesting. The Zephyrian Merchant Guild has approached us about establishing regular trade routes. They say they prefer dealing with humans who fight honorably, rather than other species who simply try to overpower them. Hyune smiled at that. Honor was a concept she hadn't expected to hear from former pirates, but respect had a way of changing perspectives. Another message arrived, this one from the defense commander of the new Busan colony. Similar stories were coming in from across human space. Former enemies were becoming trading partners. Raiders were turning into negotiators. The galaxy's power structure was shifting in ways no one had predicted. There's something poetic